Assalamu alaikum everyone and welcome to our vocabulary strategy class on the Latin root spec. This session will be divided into two sessions, session 3 and 4. Session 3 will cover the Latin root spec. Session 4 will cover the Latin root spec from your understanding as a student. For our do now, please fill the tree with words that contain the Latin root spec, that is S-P-E-C. You have 5 to 7 minutes. Our learning intentions for this lesson are to identify the Latin root spec, to find words with the Latin root spec in a given text, and to use words containing spec to form meaningful sentences. Our success criteria are the following. I can identify the Latin root spec. I can explain the meaning of words containing the Latin root spec. I can find words containing the Latin root spec in the text The Devil and Tom Walker. And I can create meaningful sentences using the words containing the Latin root spec. By the end of this session, you'll hopefully be able to do all of these. We'll start our session with a discussion on the Latin root spec. Now, the Latin root spec is used in many English words. Additionally, most of the words that contain spec or its other variations, such as spect or spic, have their meanings revolve around clarity, light, or sight, such as the words that we have in the following example. Spectacles, circumspectly, inspectors, spectacular, spectacle, and speculation. This takes us to the meaning of the Latin root spec, which means to see. In the following example, we see the word inspect used. They inspected the new car to make sure it was running smoothly. Inspect means to look at something carefully or to view closely and critically, basically to make sure that everything is okay and everything is all right, and to examine something. So in the picture, we can see an inspector inspecting a car to make sure that it's running smoothly and it won't be getting into any accidents. In examples 2 and 3, we see the words respect and spectators, respectively. Respect means to see someone in a positive light, and spectators are observers or people that are watching something, which both take us back to the meaning of the Latin root spec, which is to see. As mentioned, spec is a Latin root, which means that it comes from the language Latin, specifically from these two words, spectare and specto. Spec is also associated with two other words, so basically they're triplets. We have spec, spect, and spectro, which respectively mean watch, see, and observe. Now, we move on to our main activity of this session. You are supposed to read the text of The Devil and Tom Walker and find words that contain the Latin root spec. You're expected to find their meanings and use these words in your own sentences. Please complete this activity in your English notebooks. Okay, so let's talk about class assignments. Every week you will have one class assignment per week. You are going to be working on this assignment during the class. This is separate from class activities. During the lesson, you'll be given time to be working on this assignment. For this week, our assignment has several steps. So, step 1, you have to find the meanings of 8 to 10 new words, and you should include 1 or 2 words with the Latin root spec. Step 2, you should find a synonym and an antonym for the 8 to 10 new words that you found. Step 3, you should create sentences using the 8 to 10 new words. And step 4, find the etymology or the origin of the 8 to 10 new words. Then you submit your assignment on Edmodo. This is meant to be a leveled assignment, which means once you're done with one step, you may move on to the next step. You may start with step 2 or 3, but the end goal is for you to be able to find or create an activity where you can actually show your teacher that you've understood the meaning of 8 to 10 new words and that you've acquired those words into your vocabulary. This is the end of session 3. However, you still have to do the fun little exit ticket we've prepared for you. I challenge you to use one of the words that we learned today with the Latin root spec in a haiku. What is a haiku, you ask? It is a short poem that is made up of 3 phrases. We've provided an example for you right here. Sea breeze murmuring, a spear of diving gannets. Ocean spectacle. This is an example of a haiku, and we're excited to see what you come up with. All right, welcome to session 4 of the vocabulary strategy skill, the Latin root spec. For our do now, can you think of any Latin roots that we've recently studied or studied in previous terms? Write them down and include the words they form. Intentions for this session are to recognize the Latin root spec in context, to define the Latin root spec in context, and to use and apply the Latin root spec during in-class activities and in assignments. The success criteria are the following. I can recognize the Latin root spec. I can define the Latin root spec. I can use words containing the Latin root spec in my writing, and I can recognize, define, and use words containing the Latin root spec in writing. Let's recap from our last session. We mentioned that the Latin root spec means to see, and that there are words containing this root or the related form of this root, such as spect and spic, and they all usually have something to do with light or clarity or sight. Words such as speculate, spectator, inspector, and spectacle all have something to do with seeing something, whether it's clearly or inspecting something and making sure that it's working properly. This lesson will be entirely dedicated to you applying what you learned about the Latin root spec. You will have 2 options. 1, you can create a PowerPoint presentation containing 2 to 4 slides about the root spec. Then you will present it to the class. Or write a paragraph using at least 5 words that we studied in sessions 1, 2, and 3. Then present it to the class as a dramatic reading. Okay, so let's talk about class assignments. Every week you will have 1 class assignment per week. You are going to be working on this assignment during the class. This is separate from class activities. During the lesson, you'll be given time to be working. This is the end of our sessions for this week, but you still have to do a little exit ticket. Please suggest an activity for next week's class, as we will be doing reading next week. So please write down any activities that you think we should have in our class. Thank you.